The mare's hooves thundered against the hard-packed desert earth, throwing up clouds of dust that painted the Nevada sky amber. And Lily Ashford felt more alive in that moment than she had in all her 22 years combined. She leaned forward in the saddle, her dark hair whipping behind her like a banner of war, her heart hammering in rhythm with the horse's gallop. The men watching from the fence posts of hawthorn grew smaller in her periphery, their shouts fading into the wind that burned her cheeks and made her eyes water. She had beaten them all again, every single man who thought they could outpace her, outdistance her, outdo her. They never could. When she finally slowed her horse to a trot and circled back toward the makeshift starting line, the gathered crowd wore expressions ranging from grudging admiration to outright disbelief. It was September 1883, and the autumn sun beat down mercilessly on this remote stretch of Nevada, where silver mines had brought fortune seekers and the railroad had brought everyone else. Lily had grown up here, the daughter of a freight hauler who had died when she was 17. Leaving her with nothing but his best horse and a natural gift for riding that seemed to run in her blood like liquid fire. "That is 10 races you have won this month," old Herman Miller said, shaking his head as he counted out coins from a leather pouch. 10. I have been running this betting operation for near 7 years, and I have never seen anything like it. Lily dismounted, patting her mare's neck with genuine affection. The horse was a chestnut beauty named Wildfire, and together they were unbeatable. "Then maybe you should stop betting against me, Herman." The old man laughed, but there was an edge to it. "Problem is, girl, nobody wants to bet on you anymore. You are too good. The odds are not interesting. People want a challenge, a risk. They want to believe they might win something." She understood what he meant, even if she did not like it. Racing was how she made her living now, how she paid for the small room she rented above the general store, how she bought feed for Wildfire and food for herself. If people stopped betting, she would have nothing. The worry must have shown on her face because Herman softened. "Listen, there is a man in town. Came in yesterday on the afternoon stage. He is staying at the Silver Spur Hotel, and word is he has been gambling heavy at the card tables. Lost near everything he had from what I heard, but he is asking about you." Lily's eyebrows rose. "About me?" "About the girl who can outrace any man on a horse." Those were his exact words. Herman counted out her winnings and pressed them into her palm. "Name is Parker Trent. Cowboy type. Works cattle drives from Texas up through Colorado, or so he claims. Might be worth talking to him." She pocketed the money and considered this. A stranger asking about her could mean opportunity or trouble, and in a place like Hawthorne, the two often wore the same face. But curiosity got the better of her, as it usually did. "I will think about it." The Silver Spur Hotel was the nicest establishment in town, which meant it had a working chandelier in the lobby, and the rooms got fresh linens once a week. Lily had never stayed there herself, but she had delivered messages there often enough to know her way around. She found Parker Trent in the hotel saloon, sitting alone at a corner table with a half-empty whiskey bottle and an expression that suggested he was contemplating the many ways his life had gone wrong. He was younger than she expected, perhaps 26 or 27, with sun-weathered skin and dark hair that needed cutting. He wore a dusty brown hat pushed back on his head, and his blue eyes tracked her movement the moment she stepped through the doorway. There was something magnetic about him, something that made her pulse quicken in a way that had nothing to do with racing. "Are you Parker Trent?" she asked, approaching his table directly. She had learned long ago that hesitation made people think you were uncertain, and uncertainty made them dismissive. "I am." His voice was deep, tinged with a Texas drawl that softened the edges of his words. "And you must be Lily Ashford. The fastest rider in Nevada if the stories are true. They are true. She pulled out a chair without being invited and sat down across from him. I heard you have been asking about me. Parker leaned back in his chair, studying her with an intensity that should have made her uncomfortable but somehow did not. I have been asking about you because I need your help. Or more accurately, I need your skill. I race for money. If you want to set up a proper competition with real stakes, I am interested. But Herman says nobody wants to bet on me anymore because I win too often. That is exactly why I want to bet on you. Parker poured himself another measure of whiskey but did not drink it. His hands, she noticed, were steady despite the amount he had apparently consumed. I came to Hawthorne 3 days ago with $5,000. Money I saved over 5 years of working cattle drives. Money I plan to use to buy my own ranch down in Colorado. Good land near the mountains with water rights and everything. Lily felt a pang of sympathy despite herself. Let me guess, you gambled it away. Every last cent. His jaw tightened. I am not usually a gambling man, Miss Ashford, but I met someone at the card table who seemed friendly enough, who kept buying rounds and telling stories. By the time I realized the game was rigged, I had lost everything. The man's name is Victor Crane, and he owns half the businesses in this town. She knew the name. Everyone in Hawthorne knew Victor Crane, a silver mine owner who had parlayed his initial strike into a small empire of saloons, supply stores, and rental properties. He was in his 40s, handsome in a cold way and ruthless in business. Victor Crane does not need to cheat at cards. He has more money than most people see in a lifetime. Maybe he does not need to, but he enjoys it. I watched him close enough the next night to see how he was marking the deck. But calling him out would have gotten me killed. He has men who work for him, rough types who do not ask questions. Parker finally took a sip of his whiskey, grimacing slightly. So, I have been thinking of another way to get my money back. A way that would be completely legal and public enough that he could not refuse without losing face. Understanding dawned on Lily like sunrise. You want to challenge him to a horse race. You want to bet on me. I have been watching the races here for 3 days. I have seen you ride. You are extraordinary, Miss Ashford. Better than extraordinary. I have never seen anyone with your instinct for horses, your understanding of pace and timing. If I could arrange a race between you and Crane's best rider with high enough stakes, I could win everything back. The idea sent excitement coursing through her veins, but she forced herself to think practically. I do not race for free, and you just said you have no money left. I have my horse, my saddle, and my gear, worth about $300 together. It is not much, but it is something. Parker met her eyes across the table, and she saw desperation there, but also determination. And if we win, I will split the winnings with you. Half of everything we take from Crane. It was a dangerous proposition. Victor Crane was not a man who liked to lose, and getting involved with him could bring trouble she did not need. But $5,000, even split, was more money than she had ever possessed at once. It was enough to buy property, to start something real instead of living race to race. And there was something about Parker Trent that made her want to help him, something honest in his desperation that spoke to her own years of struggling. I will do it on one condition, she said finally. We do this right. Public challenge, clear terms, judges that cannot be bought. I will not give Crane any excuse to claim the race was invalid. Parker's face broke into a smile that transformed him completely, erasing the shadows of worry and revealing someone younger, more hopeful. Deal. We will make sure everything is above board. They shook hands across the table, and Lily felt the calluses on his palm, the strength in his grip. This was a man who knew hard work, who understood what it meant to build something through sweat and persistence. She respected that. Over the next 2 days, they planned carefully. Parker approached Victor Crane publicly in the main saloon on a Saturday night, when half the town was present. Lily watched from a corner table as Parker laid out the challenge. A 5-mile race across the desert flatlands east of town. Lily riding for Parker against Crane's choice of rider, with Parker's horse and gear plus $300 in borrowed money against Crane's $5,000. Victor Crane was a tall man with silver-shot hair and cold gray eyes that seemed to calculate the value of everything they looked at. He listened to Parker's challenge with an amused smile playing at his lips. "You want to bet against me using this girl, the freight hauler's daughter?" "I want to bet on the best rider in Nevada," Parker said evenly. "If you are afraid your man cannot beat her, just say so." The crowd murmured at that, and Crane's smile froze. He was too proud to back down from a public challenge, exactly as they had hoped. "I am not afraid of anything, Cowboy." "But $5,000 against 300 is not exactly favorable odds for me." "Then name your terms." Crane considered, his fingers drumming on the bar. "If your girl wins, I will pay you $5,000, clear and simple. But if my rider wins, I get your horse, your gear, and you work for me for 1 year without wages. Manual labor, mining work, whatever I need. And the girl races for me exclusively for that same year. I could make good money off someone with her talents." Lily's stomach dropped. She had not agreed to this. Becoming Victor Crane's property for a year, racing when and how he demanded, it was tantamount to slavery. She started to rise from her seat, ready to call the whole thing off, but Parker spoke first. "No, the girl is not part of this bet. She races as a professional, and she gets paid for her work regardless of the outcome. If I lose, I will work for you for 2 years instead of 1. But Lily Ashford remains free." Crane's eyes flickered to Lily, assessing her with the same cold calculation he probably used when evaluating ore samples. Then he shrugged. "Fine. 2 years of your labor against $5,000. We race 1 week from today, Sunday afternoon. That gives both riders time to prepare." He extended his hand and Parker shook it, sealing the deal. Outside the saloon, Lily grabbed Parker's arm. "Are you insane? 2 years of working for Victor Crane. Do you know what kind of conditions those miners endure? I know exactly what I am risking." Parker's voice was quiet but firm. "And I know you are going to win." "You cannot possibly be that certain. What if Wildfire throws a shoe? What if she stumbles? What if Crane has something planned that we have not thought of? Then I will work for him for 2 years and I will survive it, and eventually I will start over." He looked at her in the lamplight spilling from the saloon windows, and his expression was intense. "But I do not believe that is going to happen. I believe in you, Lily. I have watched you ride. You do not just race, you become part of the horse. It is like watching magic." No one had ever spoken to her like that before, with such absolute faith. Her father had loved her but had never quite understood her need for speed, her hunger for competition. The men in town respected her skill but resented it, too, seeing it as something unnatural in a woman. But Parker looked at her like she was something extraordinary, and it made her chest feel tight and warm. "I will not let you down," she promised. The week that followed was the most intense of Lily's life. She and Parker spent hours together, riding out to the race course that had been marked, studying the terrain, planning strategy. The desert flats looked simple, but held hidden complexities. Patches of softer sand that would slow a horse, areas where the sagebrush grew thick enough to catch a hoof, subtle elevation changes that could affect pace. Parker knew horses as well as she did, she discovered. He had grown up on a ranch in Texas, had been riding before he could walk. They talked for hours about gaits and stamina, about how to read a horse's energy and when to press for speed versus when to conserve strength. But they also talked about other things, their childhoods, their dreams, the futures they hoped to build. "Why did you leave Texas?" she asked one evening as they walked their horses back toward town, the desert sunset painting everything gold and crimson. "My father's ranch went under during a drought 5 years back. Lost most of the herd, had to sell the land to pay debts. My parents moved to San Antonio to live with my sister, but I wanted to make my own way. Thought if I worked hard enough, saved enough, I could buy my own place and do it right. Build something that would last." He glanced at her. "What about you? Why racing?" "It is the only thing I am really good at," Lily admitted. "Growing up, I was too wild for the school marms, too rough for the respectable ladies. My mother died when I was young, and my father was always working, so I spent most of my time in the stables. The horses did not care that I was supposed to be wearing dresses and learning needlework. They just cared that I was kind to them and knew how to ride." "You are good at more than just racing," Parker said quietly. "You are one of the smartest people I have met, man or woman. The way you think about strategy, the way you read people, that is rare." She felt heat rise to her cheeks and was grateful for the dimming light that hid her blush. "You do not know me that well yet. Maybe not, but I would like to." He said it simply, without artifice, and it made her heart skip in her chest. They were falling in love, she realized. Somehow in the space of a week, amid the pressure and planning, she had started to crave his company, to watch for his smile, to notice the way his eyes crinkled at the corners when he laughed. It terrified her because she had never let herself be vulnerable like this before, had never trusted anyone enough to imagine a future beyond the next race. But Parker made her want to imagine it. Made her think about what it would be like to have a partner, someone who saw her as an equal rather than an oddity. Someone who believed in her not despite her wildness but because of it. The night before the race, she could not sleep. She kept thinking about everything that could go wrong, about the 2 years Parker would lose if she failed him. Finally, she gave up on rest and walked down to the stables where Wildfire was housed. She found Parker already there, sitting on a hay bale outside the stall, keeping watch. "Could not sleep either?" she asked, settling down beside him. "Too much riding on tomorrow, literally." He smiled at his own weak joke, and she found herself smiling back despite her nerves. "Parker, I have to ask, why are you so calm about this? You are risking 2 years of your life, your freedom essentially. How are you not terrified?" He was quiet for a long moment, looking out at the star-filled sky visible through the stable doors. "I am terrified," he admitted, "but I am also sure. Sure that you can do this, sure that we made the right plan. And honestly, even if we lose, even if I end up working in Crane's mines, meeting you will have been worth it." She turned to look at him, and he was already looking at her, his blue eyes dark in the lamplight. "Parker." "I mean it, Lily. This week with you has been the best week I have had in years. You make me remember why I wanted to build something in the first place. You make me want to build it with you." Her breath caught. "We barely know each other." "I know enough. I know you are brave and brilliant and kind. I know you love your horse like family. I know you cheat at cards." He grinned when she gasped in mock offense. "I saw you playing with Herman's grandkids yesterday, letting them win. I know you gave half your race winnings last week to the widow whose husband died in the mine collapse because you heard she was behind on rent. You are a good person, Lily Ashford, and I am half in love with you already." She should have been scared by the confession, should have pulled away. Instead, she found herself leaning closer. "Only half. I am trying to be a gentleman and not rush things," he said, his voice roughening. "Maybe I do not want you to be a gentleman right now." And then she kissed him, closing the distance between them. And it was like the moment of a race when you know you are going to win, when everything aligns perfectly and the world narrows to one pure point of certainty. He kissed her back with a hunger that matched her own, his hands coming up to frame her face with a gentleness that made her ache. They stayed like that for a long time, trading kisses in the lamplight stable, and Lily felt something settle in her chest, some restless thing that had been searching, finally finding home. "Win or lose tomorrow," she whispered against his lips, "I want to try this, whatever this is between us." "Win or lose," he agreed. "I am yours if you will have me." Race day dawned clear and hot, the kind of Nevada day where the sun felt like a physical weight. By noon, what seemed like the entire town had gathered along the marked course. Victor Crane had spared no expense in making it an event, even hiring a brass band to play and setting up betting stations with official odds. He clearly expected his rider to win and wanted to milk the spectacle for all it was worth. Crane's choice of rider surprised everyone. Marcus Grant, a professional jockey who had raced in California and won significant purses there. He was lean and hard, with the calculating eyes of someone who treated racing as pure mathematics. When Lily saw him, her confidence wavered slightly. This was not some local cowboy who thought he was fast. This was someone who knew what he was doing. Parker must have sensed her doubt because he squeezed her hand. "Remember, he does not know this terrain like you do. He does not know wildfire. And he has probably never raced against someone as good as you." She nodded, drawing strength from his certainty. They had planned every detail of this race. She knew exactly where to push, where to hold back, where the ground was firmest. She knew Wildfire's capabilities down to the second. All she had to do was execute. Herman Miller served as the official starter, standing at the line with a pistol loaded with blanks. The rules were simple: 5 miles out to a marked boulder, around it, and 5 miles back. First rider across the finish line won everything. Lily mounted Wildfire, settling into the saddle with the ease of long practice. Beside her, Marcus Grant sat his horse with professional precision. His mount was a gray gelding, all muscle and speed. It would be a formidable opponent. "Riders ready," Herman called out. Lily took a deep breath, finding Parker in the crowd. He stood beside Victor Crane, his face tense but his eyes steady on her. She nodded to him, a tiny gesture of promise. "On your marks," Herman raised the pistol. The world seemed to hold its breath. "Set." Wildfire tensed beneath her, eager and ready. The pistol cracked and they exploded forward. Marcus Grant took the early lead, his gray gelding leaping ahead with powerful strides. Lily did not panic. She had expected this. She kept Wildfire to a strong but sustainable pace, letting the other rider burn energy on speed. The crowd's roars faded behind them as they stretched out across the desert, hooves pounding, dust rising. The first mile passed in a blur of heat and motion. Marcus maintained his lead, perhaps 20 lengths ahead. But Lily could see the signs she was watching for. The gray's strides were already shortening slightly, the toll of that explosive start showing. Wildfire, meanwhile, was running smooth and steady, her breathing deep and even. By the second mile, Lily began to close the gap. She did it gradually, conserving Wildfire's strength, using the patches of firmer ground she had memorized. Marcus glanced back once, his eyes widening when he saw how much closer she had gotten. He urged his horse faster, but the gray was already giving everything it had. The turning point boulder loomed ahead, a massive piece of granite that jutted from the desert floor. This was the critical moment. Lily had practiced this turn a dozen times, knew exactly how tight she could take it without slowing too much. Marcus went wide, perhaps not trusting his horse's footing in the softer sand near the boulder. Lily cut inside, leaning with Wildfire through the turn, and suddenly they were even. For half a mile they ran neck and neck. Lily could hear Marcus's horse laboring now, could see foam flecking its neck. The gray had given everything in those first explosive miles and was running on heart alone. Wildfire, by contrast, was ready to give more. "Now," Lily whispered, and she asked her horse for speed. Wildfire responded like the champion she was. Her strides lengthened, her pace increased, and suddenly Lily was pulling ahead. 1 length, 2 lengths, 5. The finish line appeared in the distance. A ribbon stretched across the desert, and the crowd's noise became audible again. A roar of disbelief and excitement. Lily let herself feel the victory building in her chest. Let herself imagine Parker's face when she crossed that line. Let herself think about the future they might build together with that $5,000. And then Wildfire stumbled. It was not a bad stumble, just a momentary misstep when her hoof caught a hidden rut. But it was enough to break her stride, to let Marcus Grant close the distance again. Lily felt her heart seize with panic, but she forced it down, forced herself to stay calm. They still had a quarter-mile left. She soothed Wildfire with voice and touch, helping her find her rhythm again. "Come on, girl. You can do this. I know you can." Wildfire seemed to hear her, seemed to understand what was at stake. She lengthened her stride again, fighting for every inch. Marcus was right beside them now, his face set in grim determination. His gray was running on empty, but sometimes empty could carry you surprisingly far on will alone. The crowd noise was deafening now. Lily could see individual faces, could see Parker pushing to the front, his hands clenched into fists. She thought she saw Victor Crane too, his expression thunderous. 200 yards, 150, 100. They were even again, perfectly matched, horses running with everything they had. Lily's world narrowed to this. The finish line ahead, the horse beneath her, the rhythm of hooves and heartbeat. She became part of Wildfire, as Parker had said, not directing but merging. Their wills aligned toward one purpose. 50 yards, 25. Wildfire found something extra, some reserve of heart and courage that separated good horses from great ones. She surged forward one more time, her nose edging past the grays, and then they were across the line. And Herman Miller was firing his pistol in the air and shouting, "Lily Ashford wins!" The crowd erupted. Lily barely had time to slow Wildfire to a stop before Parker was there, pulling her down from the saddle and spinning her around, his face split by a grin so wide it must have hurt. "You did it. You brilliant, amazing woman, you did it." "We did it," she corrected breathlessly. And then he was kissing her right there in front of everyone, and she did not care who saw or what they thought. When they finally broke apart, Victor Crane was approaching, his face carefully neutral. Up close, Lily could see the anger in his eyes, but to his credit he extended his hand to Parker. "A fair race, fairly won. I will have your money by tomorrow morning." "Today," Parker said firmly. The terms were payment immediately. Crane's jaw tightened, but he nodded. "Today, then." "Come to my office in 2 hours. I will need time to gather that much cash." As Crane walked away, shoulders stiff with wounded pride, Parker turned to Lily. "We should go together. I do not trust him to honor this without witnesses." She agreed completely. They spent the 2 hours celebrating with the townsfolk who had bet on Lily, accepting congratulations and free drinks. Herman Miller was particularly jubilant, having placed a significant side bet on Lily despite the poor odds. But beneath the celebration, Lily felt a thread of worry. Men like Victor Crane did not lose gracefully, and $5,000 was enough to make anyone dangerous. Her instinct proved correct. When they arrived at Crane's office above his main saloon, they found him waiting with two of his hired men, both wearing gun belts and unfriendly expressions. The money was stacked on the desk, neat bundles of bills that represented everything Parker had lost and more. "Before I hand this over," Crane said slowly, "I want to make one thing clear. You have embarrassed me today in front of the whole town, made me look like a fool. That is not something I take lightly." "That is not our problem," Lily said, her voice harder than she felt. "You made a bet in public with witnesses. Pay what you owe." Crane's smile was cold. "Oh, I will pay, but understand this. Hawthorne is my town. I own the businesses. I employ half the men. I control the resources. If you stay here, your lives will be very difficult. I suggest you take this money and leave Nevada. Tonight." It was a threat barely disguised as advice. Parker stepped forward, putting himself slightly between Crane and Lily. "We will leave when and if we choose to. Now give us our money." For a tense moment, Lily thought Crane might refuse, might signal his men to do something violent, but the mine owner finally pushed the stacks of bills across the desk. "Count it if you want. It is all there." They counted carefully, neither willing to trust Crane's word. $5,000 exactly. Parker divided it into two equal portions, handing half to Lily despite her protests. "A deal is a deal. You earned this." Outside, as the sun began to set over Hawthorne, they stood on the dusty street and looked at each other with the weight of possibility between them. "He was right about one thing," Parker said quietly. "We should probably leave town. Crane will make life miserable here if we stay, and I have what I came for now. Enough to buy that ranch in Colorado." "Then we go to Colorado," Lily said simply. Parker's eyes widened. Lily, I do not expect you to just uproot your whole life and follow me. We have known each other for barely 2 weeks. I know. And if you had asked me 2 weeks ago if I would ever leave Hawthorne with a man I barely knew, I would have called you insane. But Parker, I have been stuck in this town my whole life, racing for pennies, living day to day. You are offering me a future, adventure, a partner who sees me as an equal. Why would I say no to that?" He grabbed her hands, his grip almost painful in its intensity. "Because it is risky. Because I might fail, because that ranch might not work out and we could end up with nothing. Or it could work out and we could end up with everything, with a life we built together, with horses to raise and races to run and a home that is actually ours." She smiled up at him. "I am good at risks, Parker. I am very, very good at risks." They left Hawthorne the next morning on the westbound stage, their horses loaded in a livestock car, their possessions reduced to what they could carry. Lily felt no regret as the town shrank behind them. She had spent her whole life there, but it had never really been home. Home, she was beginning to understand, was not a place but a person. The journey to Colorado took 2 weeks by train and horseback. They traveled through Utah's red rock country, across the Continental Divide, finally down into the green valleys of western Colorado, where Parker's dream ranch waited. The property was beautiful, 300 acres of grassland with a creek running through it, and the Rocky Mountains rising in the distance like a promise. They were married in the small town of Ridgway by a circuit preacher, with only the land agent and his wife as witnesses. Lily wore a simple blue dress bought in town, and Parker wore his cleanest shirt and his wedding jitters openly. When the preacher pronounced them husband and wife, Parker kissed her with such joy that the land agent's wife actually wiped away tears. The first year was hard work, harder than anything Lily had experienced before. They built a small house together, just 4 rooms but sturdy and warm. They bought a small herd of cattle and began building their stock. Parker proved to be everything Lily had hoped. A tireless worker, a patient teacher, a man who truly saw her as an equal partner in everything they built. But what surprised her most was how the racing continued. Word spread quickly about the woman who could outrace anyone on a horse, and people came from neighboring towns to challenge her. Parker managed her career with the same care he gave to their ranch, negotiating fair terms, ensuring safe conditions, building her reputation. The money she won supplemented their ranch income significantly those first few years. More importantly, Parker never once suggested she should stop, never implied that being married meant giving up the thing she loved. Instead, he encouraged her, trained with her, celebrated her victories, and comforted her through the rare defeats. 2 years after their arrival in Colorado, Lily realized she was pregnant. The news terrified and thrilled her in equal measure. She had never imagined herself as a mother, had always been too wild for such domestic concerns. But when she told Parker, his face lit up with such pure happiness that her fears began to fade. "A baby," he kept saying, wonder in his voice. "Our baby. Lily, are you scared?" "Terrified," she admitted. "What if I am terrible at this? What if I do not know how to be gentle enough, patient enough?" He pulled her close, his hand settling on her still flat stomach. "You will be an amazing mother. You are patient with the horses, gentle with the calves. And our child is going to be so lucky, growing up with a mother who taught them that being different is not something to hide but something to celebrate." Their son was born in March of 1886. A healthy boy with his father's blue eyes and his mother's wild spirit. They named him Thomas, after Parker's father. Lily took to motherhood with the same intensity she brought to racing, learning everything she could, adapting her fearlessness into fierce protectiveness. She continued racing through her pregnancy and returned to it 6 months after Thomas was born, Parker caring for their son while she rode. Some people in Ridgeway disapproved, thought she should stay home like a proper mother. But most came to accept that the Trent family did things their own way. The ranch prospered. By 1890, they had built it into one of the most successful small operations in the valley. Parker's instincts for cattle and land management proved as good as Lily's instincts for horses. They acquired more acreage, built a proper barn and additional outbuildings. Lily started breeding horses, combining her gift for riding with Parker's knowledge of bloodlines. Their racing stable became famous throughout Colorado. Lily trained the horses and occasionally rode in major races, but she also began training other riders, passing on her knowledge. Parker managed the business side, and together they created something neither could have built alone. Thomas grew up wild and free, learning to ride before he could properly walk, spending his days following his parents around the ranch. When he was 5, Lily gave birth to a daughter they named Catherine. She had her mother's dark hair and fearless nature, and from the moment she could sit a horse, it was clear she had inherited Lily's gift. The years passed in a blur of work and love and growth. There were hard times, winters when they lost cattle to storms, a drought that nearly broke them in 1893, injuries and illnesses that tested their strength. But they weathered everything together, their partnership deepening with each challenge overcome. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Parker surprised Lily with a gift. A magnificent black mare, the finest he could find, with bloodlines that promised speed and heart. "I thought it was time for you to have a horse that matched where you are now," he said. "Not where you started, but where you have arrived." She named the mare Midnight, and together they won 3 of the biggest races in Colorado over the next 2 years, cementing Lily's reputation as the finest rider in the region. But more than the victories, she treasured the mornings spent training with Parker, their children watching from the fence, her entire family invested in her success. By 1896, they owned nearly 1,000 acres and employed 6 ranch hands. Their breeding program had produced horses sought after throughout the West. Thomas was 14, already helping run the cattle operation. Catherine was 9, riding in junior competitions and winning consistently. One evening, as they sat on the porch of the house they had built together, watching the sunset paint the mountains gold and purple, Parker took Lily's hand. "Do you ever miss it? The way things were at the start when it was just us and a dream?" Lily considered the question seriously. "I miss the simplicity sometimes, the clarity of purpose, but I would not trade what we have built for anything. This life, this family, this partnership, it is more than I ever imagined possible. Even though I came to you as a broke cowboy who had gambled away everything." She laughed, remembering that desperate man in the Silver Spur Hotel saloon. "Especially because of that. You believed in me when you had nothing left to lose. You saw who I really was and loved me for it. That is rarer than any fortune." He lifted her hand to his lips, kissing her knuckles. "I got very lucky the day I heard about a girl who could outrace any man on a horse." "We both did," she said softly. As the years continued to unfold, their love deepened into something solid and enduring. They fought sometimes, as any couple does, particularly when they disagreed about ranch management or how to handle their children's increasingly independent spirits. But they never fought cruelly, never weaponized the vulnerabilities they had shared. They had built their partnership on mutual respect and genuine liking, and those foundations held firm. Thomas went to agricultural college in 1898, coming back full of new ideas about scientific ranching. Catherine followed her mother's path, becoming a competitive rider of such skill that by age 15, she was beating adults regularly. She fell in love at 17 with a young horse trainer from Montana, and Lily and Parker found themselves navigating the strange experience of watching their daughter experience the same kind of whirlwind romance they had shared. "Should we be worried?" Parker asked one night, watching Catherine and her young man walk by the creek, holding hands and laughing. "Probably," Lily said. "But would it have helped if anyone had tried to slow us down?" He smiled ruefully. "Not even a little." Catherine married at 18, and her husband joined the ranch operation. Thomas brought home a practical, intelligent woman from college, and she fit into their family like she had always belonged. The ranch expanded into a true family operation, 3 generations working together. Lily continued racing until she was 45, finally retiring after a spectacular victory in Denver that earned her the unofficial title of the fastest woman rider in the West. She transitioned fully into training, becoming renowned for her ability to spot and develop talent in both horses and riders. Parker turned 50 that same year, his dark hair shot through with silver, his face weathered by decades of sun and wind. But he was still strong, still vital, still the man who made Lily's heart quicken when he smiled at her across a room. They had grown old together in the best possible way, their love maturing into something both comfortable and still surprising. On their 20th anniversary, they returned to Nevada, traveling to Hawthorne for the first time since they had left. The town had changed significantly. Victor Crane had died 5 years earlier, his empire fragmenting among his heirs. The silver mines were mostly played out and many businesses had closed. Herman Miller was still alive, impossibly old now but still sharp, and he remembered them immediately. Lily Ashford, or I suppose it is Lily Trent now, and Parker. I heard stories about what you two built in Colorado. A ranch and a racing stable, children and grandchildren. You did well for yourselves." "We did," Lily agreed, squeezing Parker's hand. "Better than we could have imagined that day I won the race." Herman smiled, his eyes distant with memory. "That was the finest race I ever saw." The whole town talked about it for years. About the girl who could not be beaten and the cowboy who bet on her and won everything back. Became a legend around here. They spent 3 days in Hawthorne, visiting old places, telling stories. But Lily felt no nostalgia for the town, no desire to stay. Her life was in Colorado now, with Parker and their family and the land they had made their own. The journey home felt right, like returning to where they belonged. As their train crossed back into Colorado and the mountains came into view, Parker pulled Lily close. "I have been thinking about something Herman said. About us becoming a legend. Does it feel strange to you, being part of a story people tell?" "A little," Lily admitted. "But only because I know the truth is better than any legend. The truth is messier and harder and more wonderful. It is about partnership and work and choosing each other every day. That is not as dramatic as a single race, but it is real." "I prefer the real version too," Parker said, kissing her temple. "Every complicated, beautiful bit of it." Their first grandchild was born in 1902. Thomas's daughter, a red-faced, strong-lunged girl they named Lily after her grandmother. Holding that baby, feeling the weight of new life and continuing legacy, Lily understood something she had not quite grasped before. The race in Hawthorne had not been the defining moment of her life. It had been the beginning, the gate opening, but everything after had mattered just as much. Every day of work, every shared decision, every moment of love and frustration and joy, it all added up to something far greater than one afternoon of racing across the Nevada desert. By 1910, the Trent Ranch was one of the premier operations in western Colorado. Their breeding program had produced champions, their cattle operation was profitable and sustainable, and their family had grown to include 4 grandchildren with another on the way. Lily was 53, her dark hair now streaked with silver, her hands marked by decades of work. Parker was 57, still strong but moving a bit more carefully, his knees protesting the countless hours in the saddle. They still rode together most mornings, just the two of them, recreating the early days when they had planned race strategy and fallen in love simultaneously. Sometimes they raced each other for the sheer joy of it, letting their horses run full out across the grazing land. Parker never beat her, but he came close sometimes, and she loved him more for trying. One morning in early spring, as they walked their horses back toward the barn, Parker said, "I have been thinking about the future. Not the immediate future, but years from now. What happens to all of this when we are gone?" It was not a morbid question, but a practical one, the kind of thing people who built something real had to consider. "The children will carry it on," Lily said. "Thomas has the head for management. Catherine has the passion for the horses. Their children are already learning the business. This place will outlast us. I hope so. I hope 100 years from now there are still Trents working this land, raising horses, remembering where it all started. In a saloon in Nevada with a desperate cowboy and a girl who could outrace any man," Lily said, smiling. "And fell in love while saving both their futures," Parker added. He reached across the space between their horses and took her hand. "Thank you for that week, Lily. Thank you for believing in me when I had nothing. Thank you for every day since." She felt tears prick her eyes, the good kind that came from happiness too big to contain. "Thank you for seeing me, for never trying to make me smaller or safer or more conventional, for letting me be exactly who I am." They rode the rest of the way in comfortable silence, hands linked between their horses, the Colorado sun warm on their faces. That evening, surrounded by their children and grandchildren at the dinner table, Lily looked around at all they had created and felt complete. The wild girl who had raced for pennies in Nevada had found something more valuable than any purse. a partner who matched her stride for stride, a family that celebrated rather than constrained her, a legacy that would echo into the future. Years continued to pass, marked by seasons and celebrations, births and losses. Parker's father-like figure Herman Miller died in 1912, and they traveled to Nevada for his funeral, one of the largest Hawthorne had ever seen. Catherine's oldest daughter began competing professionally at 16, carrying on her grandmother's legacy with her own unique style. Thomas expanded the cattle operation into new territories, fulfilling Parker's original dream of building something that would last. Lily and Parker celebrated their 30th anniversary quietly, just the two of them riding out to their favorite spot overlooking the ranch. 3 decades of marriage, of partnership, of love that had weathered every storm and emerged stronger. They were older now, their bodies carrying the marks of hard work and time, but the essential connection between them had only deepened. "You remember that night before the race?" Parker asked, his arm around her as they sat on a blanket watching the sunset. "When I told you I was half in love with you. I remember everything about that week, every conversation, every moment. I did not tell you the complete truth that night. I was not half in love with you. I was completely, entirely, irrevocably in love with you. I just did not want to scare you off." Lily laughed, the sound carrying across the valley. "I knew. I was completely in love with you too. From the moment you walked into that saloon looking like your world had ended but you were determined to fight anyway, I knew you were someone special. We were both taking the biggest gamble of our lives that day. Not the race itself, but choosing each other, betting on love instead of safety. And we won," Lily said softly. "We won everything that mattered." Parker kissed her as the sun dropped below the mountains, painting the sky in shades of fire and gold. After 30 years, his kiss still made her heart race. After 30 years, she still felt like the luckiest woman alive. They rode together until they physically could not anymore, their final shared ride happening on Lily's 68th birthday in 1925. Parker was 72, his body finally succumbing to the decades of hard labor. They went slowly, carefully, around the property they had built together, stopping at each landmark to remember. "This is where we built the first barn," Parker said. "This is where Catherine fell off her horse and broke her arm when she was 7, Lily added at another spot. "This is where we decided to expand the breeding program. This is where we used to race each other every morning." They ended at the house, now expanded and improved but still essentially the structure they had built together with their own hands all those years ago. "We did good, Lily," Parker said, his voice thick with emotion. "We built something real." "We built something perfect," she corrected. "Not perfect in the sense of flawless, but perfect for us, exactly what we needed." Parker lived 3 more years, finally passing peacefully in his sleep in 1928 at the age of 75. Lily held his hand as he slipped away, whispering promises that she would keep their legacy alive, that she would make sure their story continued. His last words were, "I love you," spoken so softly she barely heard them, but she felt them in her heart where they had always lived. She buried him on a hillside overlooking the ranch, with a view of the mountains he had loved and the land they had tamed together. The headstone was simple. Parker Trent, 1853–1928, beloved husband, father, and partner. But Lily knew no stone could really capture who he had been or what they had shared. She lived another 12 years, staying active in the ranch operations until nearly the end. She trained her final champion horse at age 79, a magnificent bay colt that went on to win races across the West. She told stories to her great-grandchildren about the wild days in Nevada, about a race that changed everything, about a cowboy who had believed in her when he had nothing left to lose. When Lily Trent died in 1940 at the age of 83, the ranch she and Parker had built covered over 3,000 acres and employed 30 people. Their descendants numbered in the dozens. The breeding program they started had produced generations of champion horses. Their love story had become the founding myth of the family, told and retold, embellished and celebrated. They buried her next to Parker on that hillside, and the headstone read, Lily Trent, 1857–1940, beloved wife, mother, and champion, together forever. And they were together, in the land they had built, in the family they had created, in the legacy that continued long after they were gone. The girl who could outrace any man and the cowboy who bet on her had won far more than money or property. They had won a lifetime of love, of partnership, of building something that mattered. They had won each other, and that victory echoed through generations. A story of courage and faith, and the kind of love that transforms everything it touches.